Good morning, Sophians. I am here with my son to the right, obviously,
Hi, Sophians.
and this is Mac.
Hi.
I just pulled them out. We're having dinner, and Michaela's cooking it, and I said, you have to come outside and record something with me. So they have no clue what we're talking about, so they're totally off the cuff. But I did want to share something about today with you all about what it means to be with God versus what it means to be for God. Those are two prepositions that from our grammar days. Do you guys remember what a preposition is? I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I couldn't even remember.
College graduates, Georgia Tech engineer, UNC Asheville, health and wellness, medical, and pharmaceutical athlete. Actually, Mac was a cheerleader at Georgia Tech, but she's an engineer now. She doesn't do cheerleading anymore. But
Tired.
a preposition, for you guys who don't remember, is something that connects, connects words, yeah, but it connects like two different things, or two different people. It builds associations, and so the whole issue of doing something for God. I'm going to talk about this: doing something for God versus doing something with God. What's the difference between those two elements? They are totally on the spot, and the sun is hitting you right in the face, but that's okay. For God versus with God. Any comments?
Well, I guess when you think of with, it's God with you and walking alongside you. For, it seems like you're basically enslaved to do something. Not saying that extreme, but it makes it sound more like this is something that you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Georgia Tech, do you have a comment?
Similar to keep with like a plural versus a singular. Like for seems very one way, but with seems very two way.
Very good. Yeah, I think both are great. The for is sometimes sort of transactional. I think you're creating a transaction. You don't need relationship with doing something for something. So you work for Eaton Corporation, correct? Mm-hmm. And so you're doing stuff for them all the time. Doesn't mean you're in a relationship with them. But if you're working with your boss or with another individual, it means that there's a two-way street. It means relational. And this is a big deal, this whole preposition and how we approach God. You think about it. So if you are living your life with God in the I'm doing stuff for God, it's all transactional versus I'm doing stuff with God. What's the difference? Is there a difference between the two?
So you just get burnt out.
With which
for four. You get burnt out, and you think about doing things with is so much more powerful. Relationship is so much more powerful than, like you said, you can just do and do and do and become. I mean, you have Exodus open, so you think even about the Israelites. They do for Pharaoh, but do they have anything with Pharaoh? No. And they burn out and get tired.
Do you have a comment?
It just comes down to the heart, and I don't necessarily think for is bad either. I think there are times when you need to be doing things for God, but in the long run, you will get burnt out, like Mac was saying. And going back to it's just turns into a transactional type of relationship. So
yeah, so it's not. I think I agree with you both. I think it's not an either or. I think but the dominant preposition, I believe, has really we got to weave the with in relational with God, because I think you're right too. Is that you can really burn out. It's if you're doing something just for versus with. The outcomes may look the same. So if somebody's in your workplace doing something for their work versus doing something with another person in that work, the productivity is the same. The outcome is the same, but there may be, like you said, or I can't remember who said it. You said there can be burnout, and so the question today I want to look at is with God or for God. or a little bit of both, but which way do you lean more into? And so I think in my early Christian life, and I would say even up to the last 5 years, a lot of my definition and preposition has been for. I'm going on a mission trip for God. I'm going to share my faith for God. I'm going to have a time where I read and study my Bible for God, or I'm going to go reach out to the poor for God. And now it's changing because I want to do things with God. Does that make sense? Any thoughts, comments? Just grab the mic as we go. But to set this up, I want to look at a situation in Exodus that there was a moment where Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, really understood what it meant to partner with God. And that's what I really want us to look at today is what does it mean to partner with God? And I'm going to be grabbing a little bit of information from the Talmud, which is kind of a commentary from the prior to the first century, prior to Jesus, first couple hundred years. They had commentaries by rabbinical circles that really looked into the text to find nuances, things that didn't really make sense. And so they would look at something and go, why is that here? And the reason they did that, or let me ask you, why do you think the reason God puts stuff in there that's a little oblique or a little bit off, or not off, but just maybe this thing doesn't sound like the other? There's just something unique about it. Any thoughts on that?
I think it makes you do what you just did. Like, it makes you question. It makes you actually think about it and go to God with, what is this? I don't understand this. Or this doesn't make sense. Yeah, I think it makes you dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, it makes you do a deep dive. Go down a certain rabbit hole, and that's really how they taught in the first in the Old Testament times. The Bible was not just about laying out like a PowerPoint for all the answers, like here's what it means, and do this and do that. That's kind of how we think. All those books that we've been reading on what it means to be a thinker who is kind of an Eastern type of thinker versus a Western type of thinker. God has, I think, designed the Bible that we can kind of jump in and do a deep dive. And not to have secret meanings or anything like that, but that's kind of what he wants to do as far as us learning.
Yeah.
Okay. Look like you're going to comment.
I didn't know what you wanted from that.
So I'm going to look at Exodus, and there's a moment here, and this is the first. Again, these guys are fresh into this; they haven't been prepped at all. So if their comments seem a little bit off, it's because they haven't heard this yet, or the sun's in your eyes, like Mac. However, in Exodus 15. We read a story about when this is after Moses had led the Israelite nation out of across the Red Sea, and the Pharaoh's army was totally drowned. And
Totally drowned.
Yeah, and there's a song. There's a song that's sung, and it takes up, probably 19 verses in the beginning of Exodus 15. It's by Moses. And Moses really details everything that God has done. There's a song of thanksgiving. And then this unique thing happens where it's followed up in verse 20. It says, after this song with all the whole Israelite nation singing and really going over this, it says, then Miriam the prophet, Aaron's sister, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with timbrels and dancing. Miriam sang to them, sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he is hurled into the sea. And the writers of the Talmud, this commentary, really picked up something unique here. There was something that was that made them kind of do a deep dive, and that was I hate to put you on the spot, but did anything jump out at you here? Why? A couple questions here.
I don't even know what a timbrel is. Yeah.
I'm
guessing an instrument.
A timbrel would be an instrument, and maybe a tambourine. We'll say a tambourine. But I don't expect you guys to jump into this deep dive yet.
Miriam the prophet.
Yeah, Miriam the prophet. That's the first time they mention Miriam as a prophet. So they noticed that, and also look at that second thing, guys, where it says something there about the sister. who is labeled as Miriam's brother or Aaron?
Aaron.
Aaron. So Aaron is the brother. Now, what's interesting to the commentators about that? So Miriam is both the sister of two guys. Who are the two guys? Aaron and
Moses.
Moses, as they say, Moses. So what the writers looked at was, why in the world would you not put the most prominent prophet as being the sibling of Miriam? You know, Aaron was significant, obviously, but why that? So they took a couple things. The other thing they mentioned is that Miriam basically repeated some things. She sang a song with a bunch of women afterwards, but there was really, they asked the question why, because Moses had really hit all those points in his little song, his big song. Have you guys ever been? Mac was became a Christian in
Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
In college.
In Collage.
In collage.
In Collage. And have you ever been in a situation where a 30-minute sermon was given, and then somebody came up right afterwards and kind of gave a commentary on the sermon? Yep. What are your thoughts on that when those things happen? Do you have any thoughts?
Did we not just hear this?
Yeah. This is showing all of our attitudes. But AJ goes, did we not just hear this?
Pure heart.
AJ says, from a pure heart. But I think that's one of the things I always thought. We just heard this. Why are we repeating this? And when I look at this song, it's the same thing. It's like, Miriam, we just sang this song. It's like repeating a song. Like right before this lesson, you guys heard that really great song. Oh my gosh, it's there's someone in the fire. Yeah, someone in the fire standing next to me. And if I got on here and said, I'm going to sing another song, and it was the same one, you would obviously don't want me to do that. But it would be, you know, you're like, why, John, are you doing that? And so I think that's what's interesting to the prophets. And so they take this, and they actually went back to Exodus 2, and they saw a lot of parallels here. And so in Exodus 2 is the moment. So the issue was, why was she mentioned as Aaron's sister? And also, why was she mentioned as a prophet? And that's what they were kind of cluing into. What's going on here? Is there something in the background? Now, I want you to realize that the Talmud is a commentary, so it's not gospel. It's not like this is the truth. It's. Do you play piano? I know you don't.
Never got me lessons.
Yeah, AJ goes, we never got him lessons. But the deal is that the Talmud is just a commentary, so I'm not projecting that as, man, you're like brightened out here.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Angel. Okay, so Mac is, she says, or a prophetess. We're doing this outside, as you know, or as you can see. But there's but the Talmud, as I'm explaining a few things on how they looked at this, it obviously is just their take on it. And so what they tend to understand is that they believe, or just kind of commented on, is that there's a likelihood in their view that Miriam probably had a vision of some sort, and that's why she was labeled as a prophet. And at the time, if you look here in Exodus, this is when Pharaoh, in verse 22, it says, Pharaoh gave this order to all his people, every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. So this edict came down from Pharaoh. The Israelites were growing in number, and he was concerned about this. They were going to take over. And you're so bleached out. That's okay. Mac is not an angel. She's here. Yeah, come over. Come over this way. Here, let's do this. Here, come this way. Come a little bit closer.
Okay.
Ah, there she is.
Very important.
Yeah.
So they surmised that at this point that as a child, she knew that that if there was another child born into your family and happened to be a little boy, it was lights out. That boy was going to die. And so her parents, according to the Talmud, this ancient commentary, surmised that the two parents, these two Levites that we're going to read later, that became the parents of Moses, decided not to have any more children. But she went to them because she had this dream, and the dream was, "Mom, Dad, have a baby because this is going to be the salvation for Israel." And so they went with that, and then the point came where it was game on because the baby's born, and it's a boy. And we read, it says, actually, why don't you read it, AJ? I'm speaking too much. Read just from verse 1 to about 8, right there.
Okay, this is chapter 2, verse 1. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the river bank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother.
Well read.
I can read.
I know, he's a good reader.
College.
He went to college. So this amazing moment happens, and what the writers of the Talmud found is that there's actually a few parallels here that were very interesting. But so Moses is pushed out into the reeds in the Nile, and but there's a person kind of standing watch, and that person was Miriam. Yeah, Miriam was out there. And so Miriam was standing and watching, and so that's why they connect the two stories. And again, like I said, there are some parallels. But the point of interest is when they get to this is really talking about the with and the for that we were talking about earlier. But if you look at the moment when Pharaoh's daughter sees the baby, what does it say? It says in verse 6, she saw he was crying.
I'm gonna find it.
It's right there.
Okay. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrew babies.
Okay, so if you're in her position as, maybe she's a mom already, or maybe she's not. Who knows? But there's a moment here that's very interesting, and it sort of conflicts. So her first thing that she feels is what? And what's the second statement when she talks about the Hebrew boy? What would be going through your mind if you placed yourself in this woman's position, being Pharaoh's daughter?
What do you do with this baby? That'd be what I would think.
You naturally obviously have that thought of like, oh my gosh, this poor baby. What do you do? This baby needs something. But then you also have the idea that it's a Hebrew baby, and those are not, and male, those are not supposed to be around. So then you have that conflict of, I feel for this baby, but I also have this other law, basically, and how do I...
And who's the giver of the law?
Her dad.
Oh, yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah. So it's not only just, hey, there's this law, but it's her dad.
Personal law.
It's very personal, and so there's a lot of conflict there. There's probably a lot of, and it's at this moment that Miriam steps in, and she goes up and she says, I can find a nursemaid for this baby, and then it all kind of plays out. And so now let's place ourselves in Miriam's shoes. What did it take for her to approach and do this one moment thing? I mean, what was the risk she was taking? What are some things that might have been going through her mind? And the mic will go to whoever, really quick. What do you think? Place yourself in Miriam's shoes, if she wore shoes back then.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 college students, but I'm going to go ahead and answer.
You're a college student as well.
I'm a college student, so no. I what the writers of the Talmud said is that it's at this moment with these two conflicting thoughts that she has empathy for the baby, but she also knows that it's against her dad. Then that's when Miriam steps in and takes a risk because she's a Hebrew and you don't address Pharaoh's daughter, so there's a risk to her life and all those things. And she steps out and she does it, and it's at this point, guys, and so all these unique moments of comparing the two elements, and just for those of you guys back at home, a little bit of a comparison of what the Talmud really talked about, and looking at these two stories, the moment of the rescue from the Nile and also the rescue from the Red Sea. Both occurred in water, obviously, Nile and Red Sea. The Red Sea is actually the Sea of Reeds, and this is done in reeds. He was pushed out amongst the reeds. Both involved the Egyptians. Okay, one was Pharaoh, and one was Pharaoh's daughter, and one was Pharaoh and his army. They both had a major miracle in place. The miracle of this baby being saved by Pharaoh's daughter is significant, as well as the other one was a major miracle with waters parting and everything happening on that level. There was probably another neat parallel, but the one that really interested the Talmud and the writers of the Talmud was that there's a phrase here where it says Miriam stood by the banks and watched. And the same phrase in Hebrew is found over where in Exodus 14, when Moses says to the people basically the same phrase, stand here and watch. And so those are very interesting because they connect the stories. And whether we believe all the background stuff that I mentioned, which we don't have to believe, that she was a prophet and she had a dream and she told her mom and dad, that's neither here nor there. There are real and cool parallels that parallel the story. And so what they do is they look at it and they say, this is why Miriam sang that song at the end, because she saw the fruition of her walking with God at that one moment back in time when she was at the Nile. She stepped into a partnership with him. And instead of just standing on the banks and praying, she, because we can do that. She could have stood at the banks and just prayed and said, God, please save my brother. But what she did is she partnered with him, and she engaged and she moved forward, which is really, really cool. And it changed everything. And so if you look at the outcome at the Red Sea, she's like, God, you've done this. And so it makes sense that she would sing another song. So it's just, I get chill bumps thinking about it. But
Do you think she was drawing that parallel at that time?
well, that's what I'm saying. She could be. I mean, that's something we need to ask her.
She like, this looks familiar. Like,
Could be. I mean, that's what the Talmud really was looking at. Is there, and whether it's here or there, I think it's just interesting to think of, and it can help our faith. But the biggest thing that doesn't require all these leaps of faith, of whether she was a prophet and she was looking forward to that, is that she really did interject herself at a moment when there was a big deal going on, and so the the whole issue of walking and participating with God, getting back to the overall theme that we're talking about today, is for and with, is really, really important. Is because we see it in Miriam that she did this, and so and I think it's important for us. So as I'm looking at it, God has always wanted us to be participatory with Him and not just do things because we're obedient. And for years, I walked and I'm just going to be obedient. I'm just going to be obedient, which is good. I mean, obedience is a good thing, but it's got to go beyond that to be obedient, but also be walking with Him and in partnering. So it's a whole different mind change to do things with Him and partnering with Him. Praying that you're going to partner and interject yourself is much different than being passive and just sitting back and praying. Any thoughts on this? I'm going to kind of tie it up here in a second, but any comments on just what we've been talking about? No? Okay. Good. You guys will have a moment because after we finish this, we can share a few things. But so, the Bible, it just shows God always. He's always been a with God. In relational things, at the day of creation, on page 1 in Genesis, it says, "Let us create," and so He also gives kind of a responsibility to man at that time, saying, "Hey, go and work the fields and rule over things." And so there was always this idea of with. it's exciting to do things with and to partner with him. And so, as we pray, not just pray kind of a prayer, God, please, be with this person, but think about how can I partner with him in affecting the outcome of some moment. How can I do that? I mean, I think about that with you. I know you would never share this, but with you guys know Max, obviously. But I know AJ spends times where he focuses in on Max, and I know you fasted at times and thought about Max as far as him going through his chemo and everything like that, and that's important. And I think that's partnering. And there's other examples of partnering. Your friend who just lost her mom. Do you? I mean, how did you partner with her, with God, as she kind of walked through that? Can you explain that?
So I have a friend named Sneethia. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have prayed together every single day for over a year and a few months now. But I think it was cool because when we first started praying, her mom hadn't gotten cancer yet, and we were friends, but not that close. And we got to become really close just by hearing each other pray. Excuse me. And so we built a beautiful relationship surrounded by God. And I got the ability to see into her relationship with God, and I was able to show her mine with God, and it was a phenomenal way to build a relationship that I hadn't really done before. And it was beautiful to retrospectively look back because her mom did get sick and passed away. And it was, I remember her saying, like, I don't think I would be able to pray tonight had we not been doing this for almost a whole year prior. Like, I just don't think I would be faithful right now. Which is a super moving thing, all God. But, yeah, it's really cool to do that with her.
Yeah, so that's a really great example of partnering with God and moving with Him through these difficult things, and it's important that we kind of move in that direction, because otherwise I can only last so long in a for relationship. If I'm all about just doing things for Michaela, and it's all about that, just being it's only going to go so far. And so, anyhow, we're at 30 minutes, so we're going to stop. Love you guys, and we will see you on the flip side and be able to chat a little bit. So these two young people say goodbye.
Goodbye.
And goodbye.
Goodbye.
Love you all. Bye.